Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we're going to check out another Mattel Jurassic World figure as we have the brand new version of the Sinoceratops. Finally, the greenish version has released, and honestly, it looks really beautiful here in person. There's only one area that I can see straight away that I'm not a huge fan of, and I feel like a lot of other people share the same opinion as far as this one area, but as far as the box art goes, we have your standard Camp Cretaceous box art, pretty much the usual as far as that goes. And then here on the back, we have an image of the action feature of the Sinoceratops. And again, another little shot over here sort of displaying the action feature of the Sinoceratops. And then down here, we have a shot of two other Mattel figures that are in this wave, which is Grim and apparently the newer version of the Cryolophosaurus, which I'm really excited to get a hold of. Definitely a big fan of that one already. I really think that the paint scheme works much better on it than the previous version. And then we also have this kind of little booklet over here that they have been including for quite some time. So I'm really psyched about this figure. Let's go ahead, break it out of the box, and just go straight to the closer look right now. So as far as the Sinoceratops goes, we have taken a look at the sculpt previously on the initial release, so we don't really need to take a look at the sculpt again, just basically what's new with the figure, and that would of course be the paint scheme, because the figure as a whole is exactly the same sculpt, exactly the same action features and articulation and all of that compared to the previous one. But again, as far as what's new, we've got new paint application, which is a much more accurate paint scheme to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. The previous one was more of a Camp Cretaceous actual paint scheme. This one's more of a Jurassic World paint scheme, which is again the same similar looking paint scheme that we had initially seen on the Pachyrhinosaurus, which was marketed as a Sinoceratops. But now we have the correct paint scheme, the correct species, and all is well in the world. And as you can see, as far as the figure goes, up here on the face, you have this very nice greenish coloration, and then you have this kind of like off-white that comes trailing in from the beak area and then runs up around the eye and just kind of splotches here and there. Looks really quite cool. You can also see that the eye itself is painted with a green, like a light green. And the pupil itself, unfortunately, is the same kind of darker green that we see here in the background of the eye area. It's the same dark green that we see all over the rest of the dinosaur, pretty much. It's like the primary body color, and it's just kind of in the background there of the eye, and they've just kind of opened it up to give that area of coloration, basically the pupil, and I don't like when Mattel does that. Sometimes it works okay. It really does not work well on this one specifically. A black pupil would have helped the figure, I think, a lot as far as the appeal factor to the eye goes. And I'm also just generally not a big fan of that green coloration there in the eye. I feel like they could have chosen a much more appealing coloration for the eye area. And definitely the only downside that I can see straight away as far as this figure goes. As far as the horns and everything that you see all over our Sinoceratops, you can see that they are painted really nicely with a nice brownish coloration. Each and every horn has been painted beautifully, except for the one here on the side of the face. I don't know why Mattel continues to skip out on that area of their ceratopsians. They just really don't like that horn. It's kind of like the dew claw being painted on theropods. They just hate to do it. I don't know why, but Mattel should probably take note and start painting that horn, because I think that would make the overall appeal factor amp up quite a bit compared to what we have here. Because again, this one horn here is such a distinctive horn. You really see that on the face of the dinosaur. It's one area that I feel like absolutely should have paint, but unfortunately does not. But as we run up along the frill, you can see all of the others are painted, and they are painted quite nicely. There doesn't really appear to be much, if any, sloppiness to the painting there of the horns. It all looks pretty good. The eye paint on the opposing side here looks a little sloppy, I will say that, but over here on this side it definitely looks quite a bit better than it did on the previous side. But you can also see as we move up here into the frill, there's like this orangish coloration that kind of borders around the inside area of the frill in a few different spots, and you can see more of that kind of off-white that shows up there, the same similar coloration that we have down here on the face. And you can also see that the beak is painted really beautifully with almost like a raw sienna type of a brown. Very nice coloration chosen for the beak area right there. But that's really about all that you see up here on the face as far as the paintwork goes. But I will state that that head sculpt is just gorgeous beyond belief. They did a great job on the head sculpt of this Sinoceratops. And then as we move back into the body, back here you really only have two variations of color. You have the main green, the primary green coloration of the body, and then you also have, again, more of this off-white that we see up here, shows up here on the back, and it just kind of splatters all over the place and designs all over the place, and that's really about it. There's no other coloration to the figure. I don't even see speckles or anything. There's no coloration here on the underside. We do have the code for the Jurassic Facts app if you would like to add this to your collection, if my camera would focus on it correctly, but other than that, that's really about it. Paint-wise, still an unbelievably beautiful sculpt here on the part of Mattel. They just continue to blow me away, even though I've had the original version of this, for quite some time. Looking at this one here again in person, it's been a little while since I actually pulled my Sinoceratops out of the collection and taken a look at it, and I am just so flabbergasted continuously with how good the sculpts are from Mattel, and this is, again, a gorgeously sculpted figure from Mattel, and I'm really psyched to see it now with the greenish paint scheme. Now, as far as articulation goes on our Sinoceratops, it's again the same articulation that we had on the previous version, but we know there is articulation in the head and neck area, which we will get to because that's going to activate the sound feature of the dinosaur if we do it right now. We also have articulation in the legs. They move forward and back quite nicely. And then articulation in the rear legs, which it's definitely a little stiff because I haven't really moved it around much. But we do have articulation back there, and they can also move out away from the body, like you usually get when it comes to a Mattel figure. And then you have articulation in the tail, but that's going to activate the action feature as well as the sound feature of our Sinoceratops. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So as you can see, it can go up and down, and it can also swivel, so I'll do it once more. So you've got some really cool articulation, a really cool action feature, and some really cool sounds that definitely sound very herbivore-like coming from the Sinoceratops. As far as a size goes, for a length, if we go from the horn right here to the tip of the tail, you are looking at about the 13-inch range, or about 33 centimeters, so it's definitely a very large figure. And then for a height to the top of the horns, roughly around the 5-inch range, or about the 12.5 centimeter range, I would say, closing in on 13. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, next to our newest variant of the Sinoceratops. And next to these guys, you can really tell that this figure sports some very large size overall. Definitely a big figure from Mattel, as the Sound Strikes usually are, but I feel like this Sinoceratops is maybe a little larger than even your standard Ceratopsian in this range. Definitely a very big figure. So this newest version of the Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, although it's more of a Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Sinoceratops is absolutely awesome. Although I will say I do believe that this color scheme also appeared in Camp Cretaceous. I do recall seeing it at some point, but they have like this one, and then they also have a bluish one. So they have a little variation as far as the colors of their species go in Camp Cretaceous in comparison to Jurassic World, where we only really saw this color scheme on the Sinoceratops. But I think that Mattel has done a great job here of replicating it in figure form, really adding in the almost, I'd say, the perfect tone of green, or at least fairly close to the correct tone of green that we see on the actual dinosaur in the film. I think the tone of green might have been just a hair darker than what we see here, but they also have done a great job of including areas that are pretty significant as far as the Sinoceratops goes, like that kind of orangish brown that is up there on the frill, as well as the holes in the frill, again, something you see on the Sinoceratops in Jurassic World. And they've applied all of the paint beautifully. All of the paint looks nice and natural throughout the entire figure. Very well done overall. The only area, well, actually, I guess 2 areas now that I've kind of realized it, that I'm not a huge fan of would be the eyes. I don't like when Mattel kind of leaves the pupil area open to just capture the coloration that's behind the eye. I really wish they'd just always include a black for the eye, a black pupil, something along those lines. It would really make the figures look much more appealing, because I feel like the green eye in general doesn't make the eye look very good. It meshes too harshly, I would say, with the overall coloration of the dinosaur. It just doesn't stand out as well as it should, and then that pupil not being dark enough really takes quite a bit away from the overall appeal factor of the eye. But the only other area that I'm not a huge fan of on the figure would be the fact that they continuously miss that horn on the side of the face as far as the paintwork goes. Like, I don't understand, if you've applied paint to every other horn on the head, why would you just miss that one horn? I wish they would go back and do that. It's similar to like paint on the nails. You know, it's such a small little area, and I get that it saves them money by not applying that paint. But if you really want to give us the best possible product, you should apply paint to those areas, because again, it really amps up the overall appeal factor to the figure when you do that. Just take a look at the old Kenner figures. Again, with the painted nails on all of them, they just look so much better. And that's one thing that I feel like Mattel is lacking. Like, a little more paint application would really do a lot of good in the Mattel line, because the sculpts are fantastic, and in my opinion, the sculpts of the figures from the Mattel line are better than the sculpts that we saw in the classic Kenner line. There's just so much insane detail. They're so screen accurate continuously, and Mattel, again, like you see here with this Sinoceratops, just busts out incredible sculpts on each and every one of the figures. The only thing that they are honestly lacking is paint in certain areas of the figures. And again, like even on this one, like some paint going out onto the tail, like maybe some of that coloration there on the top would have, again, helped the overall appeal factor to the figure. But aside from the paint not being as abundant as I would like, the figure as a whole is fantastic, and I absolutely love it. Even without that stuff added, I just would have loved it more with more paint application added to it. But the figure is even cooler when you add in the fact that it has some nice articulation, a really cool action feature, and some beautiful herbivore-like noises. So as a whole, the figure is definitely a great release from Mattel. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine on Amazon.com. I don't know for sure if they have any more in stock, but I will, of course, include a link for you to check. So make sure you do just that, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.